I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. On today's video, we're on the FM3 and I want to dial in some sweet Univibe tones. Before we get started, I've got a PRS DGT plugged straight into the FM3. As always, you're going to be hearing the unprocessed DI output from the FM3, and I've loaded up some blocks from my free blocks library. If you haven't watched last week's video, you can get access to those blocks. I've got instructions on how to install them and plenty of examples there. I'm using the 50-watt Plexi from my library paired up with the Crunch Dynacab and the Everyday Plate reverb settings. So let's just hear that on the bridge pickup of this guitar. Then I will switch over to the neck pickup and pull on the coil tap so you can hear something a little cleaner. There is plenty of fun to be had with just those three blocks, but we are here to talk about some Univibe tones. So a Univibe is actually a 4-stage phaser that utilizes photocells, which is pretty unique. We can talk about that a little bit later on, but ultimately it is a phaser and it lives in the phaser block in the fractal ecosystem. So let's add a phaser before the amp and cab here. I'm going to go down to the phaser block. Then I'm going to start by selecting the classic vibe type in here. Now at stock settings, I think this sounds pretty fantastic. What I'm going to do is just noodle around a little bit and dial it in. The three main controls to focus on are the rate, the depth, and the overall effects mix. So if you want the classic Univibe chorus sound, leave the mix where it is. If you want the vibrato effect from a classic Univibe, we can turn the mix control up to 100%. And then rate and depth do what they do on pretty much every other modulation device. Again, because a real Univibe uses photocells, it's less of a swirly sounding effect and more of a throbbing sounding effect. Let's just play it and then we can talk about it later. That is an instant vibe, pun totally intended on there. There are a few things to take into consideration when you're running a Univibe. in conjunction with some overdrive. If you wanted to place, say, a drive pedal in here or go for the vintage thing and add a fuzz, whether you place that before or after the Univibe is going to give you a pretty different effect on there. So let's do that. Let's chuck in a drive pedal on here. I'm just going to use the face fuzz at the stock settings. I'll place it after the vibe settings there, and then I'll place it before so you can hear the difference. You're going to get a far more pronounced effect running it after something like a drive or a fuzz. One of my favorite combinations is actually just using the tape distortion block in here to add just a little bit of extra grit in front of the vibe. I'll let you hear that off and then on. Let's check it out. Sticking to the rate, depth, and mix control in there is pretty much everything you need to get truly epic Univibe tones. If you want to customize this further, you can go to the More tab and play with the photocell bias, attack, and release. If you think about a light-sensitive photocell, you know, as the light comes on and then goes down, you're probably going to have different characteristics from unit to unit. So you can play with the bias. That's kind of going to change the character of the modulation or the throb. And then attack and release are very subtle, but if you were trying to match, say, a real hardware Univibe and you wanted to get even closer, these are going to be really, really important. So the first thing I will do is just play with the bias on here. I'll go back to that neck single coil mode. And as I turn it down lower, it's kind of going to get like lumpier sounding and a bit more like square wave like with the bias at stock settings. I think it sounds great, but let's just hear that. Being able to soften up the attack in there is really, really nice and kind of gets you a bit closer to that true vintage vibe thing in there. The final thing that you can do in here to mimic a real vintage Univibe, they had an expression pedal on there. So let's attach the rate control to one of our expression pedals on here. I've got an expression pedal plugged into the pedal 1 jack on my FM3. I'm going to make the minimum around, say, 0.4 hertz and the maximum about 6 hertz on there. I can just control these in real time with my foot. This is also really, really nice if you just want to add some expression to your lead playing instead of, say, using a wah. What I will do at the end here is I'll also add a delay block from my library for a nice big stereo delay. This is an absolutely classic effect that is really easy to get dialed in on the Fractal, and if you want to dive deeper and truly customize it and create your dream Univibe in there, you've got all the extra options to do that. You can have expression control in there. You can have this across multiple channels with different settings. I should mention as well, the FAS vibe type sounds pretty fantastic as well if you want something that also can give you a great Univibe tone straight out of the box with a slightly different character. Let me know any other comments, questions, or suggestions in the comment section below. If you want my blocks library, it is linked in the video description, and I hope you all have a fantastic week. We'll see you for another Tuesday Tone Tip next week. Take it easy.